Hello everybody and welcome back to JoEnglish. Today I am really excited about this lesson because I have got, well, not I, we have got a really fun and interesting lesson for you. Lots of people ask me, which English should I learn? British, American or Australian? They also ask me, what's the difference between them? So I thought in this only English lesson, I would get two fantastic teachers to be with me and we can explain everything. So today you will have a teacher who specialises in British English, me, a teacher who specialises in Australian English, and a teacher who specialises in American English. And what we're going to do is highlight some of the differences in pronunciation and vocabulary that exist. I have lived and worked in both Australia and America, and I must say I love their accents, I love the way they speak, so I am really excited about this. Are you ready? Let's go. So, my first guest is, well, he can introduce himself.
I'm Pete, I'm from Aussie English, this is an Australian accent, and I'm looking forward to doing this video. Let's get into it.
And then, the teacher who needs no introduction, especially for Italian learners, we've got...
What's up guys, my name is Brian and I'm from the channel Bringlese, and unlike Joe and Pete, I am from the United States of America.
So like I said, Pete, Brian and myself, we are going to highlight some of the differences in pronunciation and vocabulary between Australian, American and British English. So the first part is a little pronunciation test. I've given them 8 words and I want to see the difference in how all 3 of us pronounce these words. So let's get the guys back and let's start. So this is the first word. In British English, now when I say British English, I'm talking about my accent, which is modern received pronunciation. I know it's not the only accent in Britain, but it is a very common accent. And I would say aluminium. Aluminium. Now I think Brian is going to say something different. So let's see.
Aluminum.
Yeah, I thought it might be different. Now, let's hear Pete.
Aluminium. Aluminium. It was weird for me to hear Joe say aluminium with this schwa sound in there. I think aluminium. And it's always weird hearing Americans saying aluminum because it's, you know, they've cut a whole bunch of letters out. It's aluminium.
Weird.
I don't know.
Well, what a great start. The first word, and all 3 of us have different pronunciations. Okay, what about the next word? Let's listen to Brian first.
Tuesday.
Okay, and what about Pete?
Tuesday. So the thing you might notice there is that what is called assimilation in linguistics is going on, right? So 2 sounds are merging together. The T is merging with that U sound and the yod inside there, and it becomes a ch sound in Australian English. Tuesday. We won't say Tuesday like Americans. No offense, Brian.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, Pete. In British English, we would say Tuesday. We wouldn't say Tuesday, but we would say Tuesday. So, this is the next word. I would say tomato. So I pronounce both T's, tomato. But sometimes in British English we use the glottal T. So you might hear tomato. So let's hear what Brian says.
Tomato.
I thought you'd say that, Brian. What about you, Pete?
Tomato. Not tomato, tomato. Okay, tomato. Right, Joe?
Absolutely right, Pete. Oh, yes. Okay, so moving on. Word number 4. Now, I'd say leisure. Now, I'm pretty sure Pete is going to pronounce it pretty similar, but I'm not sure about Brian. So let's hear.
Leisure. Leisure. Leisure.
Yeah, I thought so. What about you, Brian?
Leisure. Leisure.
So a big difference between leisure and leisure. E, leisure, leisure. Very interesting. So, word number 5.
Okay, here's one where I think we're all going to disagree. Yogurt. Yogurt.
What about you, Brian?
Yogurt. Yogurt.
You're both wrong. I'm only joking. But in British English, we would say yogurt. Yogurt. We wouldn't say yogurt. No, it sounds really strange for us. So this is word number 6. Let's start with Pete.
Garage. Garage. I don't think you'll hear many people in Australia saying garage or even garage. You may hear the garage. You may hear garage, or you may hear garage. This j versus j sound at the end there. You know, pick which one you like. But you won't hear g. Garage. Garage. That's a bit weird.
Well, thanks, Pete. That was nice and clear. I'm joking, but it goes to show that even in one country, there can be different pronunciations for the same word. Personally, I would say garage. Garage. So now let's hear Brian.
Garage. Garage.
So again, 3 different pronunciations for the same word. Okay, let's have a look at this word now. Brian, what do you think?
Fragile or also fragile. Both of those could be accepted.
And you, Pete?
Fragile. Fragile. Some people might say fragile. Fragile. But I would say fragile.
See, now you've confused me. Is it fragile, fragile? Because fragile, absolutely fragile. Yeah, I'm sure I've heard fragile. I would say my natural response would be fragile. Okay, so this is the last word. Now, this is a word that my father-in-law always gets angry with me when I pronounce it with the British accent. So let's hear these guys first. Brian?
Oregano. Oregano.
Every time Americans say this word, it makes me laugh. I would say oregano. Oregano. I think Joe and I are on the same page. Brian, oregano just sounds really weird. The rhythm's weird. There's a different sound in there. Oregano. Oregano. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with Pete on this one. I think in British English, oregano would be the default pronunciation. You might hear oregano, but oregano sounds much more natural for us. But it's strange because the American pronunciation is the closest to Italian. So there we are. Now, before we move on, I just want to listen to some of Brian's reactions to my pronunciation and Pete's pronunciation because it's pretty funny.
It sounds like the British and the Australian are similar, whereas the American is the most unusual. The weirdest ones are Tuesday with like a CH and oregano. We say oregano. And of course, aluminium is a strange one for me too. And tomato. They're all strange, let's be honest.
Cheers, Brian. Okay, so thanks a lot for that, guys. That was really interesting. Now, we're going to move on to the next exercise. This time, I'm going to show some pictures and I want them to say the word that they would say. So now we're just checking how vocabulary can change between us. So let's bring the guys back. Okay, so this is the first picture. Brian?
So the first picture, I see candy, I see a gummy worm, I see gummy bears. In general, though, this is probably just candy.
Cheers, Brian. And Pete, what do you think?
All right, so image number 1 is clearly lollies. Lollies. In Australia, this is lollies. We would understand, and some people may say candy, like Americans, because we're just so exposed to American TV and culture. But in Australia, typically we would say lollies. You know, we'll go to the lolly shop to buy some lollies.
Lollies? Really? Nah, Pete, sorry. No, just no. Because in British English, we would say sweets. Sweets. Lollies, no, definitely not. That is really weird. Sorry, Pete, but no.
Sweets, that's very British. We wouldn't say sweets usually. We'd know what you meant. But typically you're going to say lollies. You might reach for the word candy. Sweets, yeah, we wouldn't be one on the shelf to go for, to be honest.
Okay, so neither of them agree with me. Anyway, moving on. This is picture number 2. Brian?
Picture 2, I see a barbecue. Looks like a man is cooking some hot dogs on the grill.
Interesting you said hot dog, because in British English, a hot dog would usually include the bread. So the sausage and the bread together would be a hot dog. If it's just the meat, we would say sausage. Definitely barbecue. I agree with you there. In British English, we would say barbecue. Pete, what about you?
All right, so Joe, I think what you were getting at here is a barbie. A barbie, right? And that's the Australian slang term for obviously barbecue, which I think is actually a Spanish word originally and may have come through American English from Spanish and then into Australian English, and we've given it this shortcut. We've reduced it down to just Barbie. But the thing that he's cooking on the barbie, and this is what I thought you were originally asking me about, is called a snag in Australia. A sausage, right? A sausage is called a snag. Why? Don't know. But everyone will call them snags.
So again, 3 different ways of saying sausage. We've got sausage, hot dog, and snag. Now, I can understand hot dog. But again, Pete, some of your Australian words, snag, we definitely wouldn't use in Britain. Okay, so picture number 3. Brian?
Picture 3, this season is called autumn or also fall in the United States.
That's interesting, because I knew that in America you used fall for the word, but I didn't know you also used autumn. That's interesting, because in British English we would say autumn. Autumn. We wouldn't say fall. We would understand it, absolutely, but we wouldn't say it. Pete, what about in Australia?
Autumn, or autumn, if you want to say it with a T flap. Autumn. So in Australia, you have summer, autumn, winter, spring. Obviously, Americans say fall because the leaves fall off the trees. In Australia, we don't have, I believe, deciduous trees where the leaves fall off in winter because it snows and gets very cold and they regrow in, I guess, what's that, spring? In Australia, that doesn't happen. The leaves are on the plants all year round. So it would be very weird to call autumn fall. People wouldn't get it.
Okay, so moving on. Picture number 4. Brian?
Next picture, this looks like a bottle of beer. Victoria Bitter Beer, okay?
Yeah, agreed. Bottle of beer. Now, the only difference in our pronunciation is the double T. In British, we would say bottle or bottle with the glottal T. So bottle or bottle. We wouldn't say bardle d with the d sound, which is used more in America. And this picture I chose especially for you, Pete. So, an Australian beer. Let's hear you.
I love that this photo is an Australian beer. So VB is a classic beer in Australia, and the bottle in this image is a stubby. We call it a stubby. You might notice that with Aussie slang terms, you'll hear E, O, or A at the end of it. Well, right? At the ends of these words that have been shortened. So this is a stubby bottle, right? The bottle is stubby. We call it a stubby. VB is an incredibly cheap and very easy to find beer that is found in Victoria. In Queensland, their preference over VB, Victorian bitters, is 4X. Why is it called 4X? Because they can't spell beer in Queensland. Brutal. Sorry, that's a classic joke. Had to have that in there.
So I assume you're saying in Queensland they're not as intelligent as people from Victoria, so they can't spell beer? Okay. Anyway, stubby, definitely Australian. I heard this all the time when I lived in Australia, but it's definitely Australian. In Britain, we wouldn't use it. Okay, next picture. Brian?
This looks like a pair of swim trunks or a swimsuit.
Okay. Pete?
All right, so I think this photo seems to be shorts, which I imagine all of you guys use, except they look like the kinds of shorts that you go swimming in, and we would call these boardies in Australia.
Boardies. Never heard that one before.
The long word would be board shorts, right? Because I guess you're wearing these shorts when you are using a board, a bodyboard, a surfboard, a wakeboard, you know, you're partaking in those kinds of activities, you're going to be wearing shorts, you know, probably not pants, maybe a wetsuit. So we call them board shorts. Obviously, to shorten this, we call them boardies. Seeing the pattern now? All these E's at the ends of these words. Barbie, stubby, boardies.
So in British English, we would say swimming costume. So swimming costume.
Weird.
Or swimming shorts. But then we also use board shorts. Yeah. Okay, let's have a look at this picture. I think we'll start with Pete.
All right, another one that ends with the E sound, except this is, I think, part of a word that was once longer. Esky. We call this an esky.
Esky. Or icebox, I understand, but esky, I'm not even sure what that is.
I think, from my understanding, it's because there was a brand... I don't know. I've always called these Eskies, but I have a feeling there would have been a brand or something related to Eskimo, right? The word Eskimo, which is a term that's sort of fallen out of popular use. Now we just say, you know, Indigenous Canadians, or the Inuit. So because this thing is used to keep things cold, typically food and drinks, obviously, maybe dead bodies if you're a serial killer. That went dark. We call them Eskies. Eskies in Australia. If you want a really funny term for these, go to New Zealand and ask them what they call them. Chili buns. Chili bins. Chili buns.
And Brian, what would you say?
We have a cooler, a place to store your cold drinks, a cooler.
Yeah, we'd say cool box, so pretty similar. Okay, picture number 7. Brian?
The vegetable there, I see a bell pepper. That's called a bell pepper.
Now I've got a feeling that Pete has a different answer.
Oh man, this one's a capsicum. A capsicum.
A capsicum. No, I definitely don't know that one.
Agreed, Brian. I only know this because I lived in Australia, but it's still really weird. In British English, we would say pepper. Not even bell pepper, simply pepper.
I don't know why people call these peppers. It always freaks me out because they're not spicy, right? In Australian English, we would say a pepper is like a chili. If you go to a supermarket and you ask someone where the peppers are, they're going to point you to the chilies. We use those words interchangeably. The capsicums are the, I guess, peppers that aren't spicy. They're not hot when you eat them, right? Like, I don't know what, jalapenos, for example. So yeah, capsicum. I would say that, capsicum.
Okay, so the last picture. Now, this is a shop where you can buy alcohol. In English, British English, we would say an off license. An off license. What about you, Pete?
Bottle-o. A bottle-o. Bottle-o.
Wow, never heard of that one before. A liquor store, the place where you buy liquor. The store where you buy liquor, a liquor store.
I don't know why. I should probably know why. I need to look this up. That's just what we would say. We'd probably say bottle shop, but usually you would just contract this down and say bottle-o. I'm going to go get some booze from the bottle-o. Off-license sounds very weird to me when I hear that. And liquor store, that sounds massively American. So yeah, if you come to Australia and someone says to you, I'm going to go to the bottle-o and grab a few stubbies, you know that they're going to the liquor store or the off-license and they're going to get some beers.
Wow. Apparently liquor store is said in very different ways,
So there we are. I thought that was pretty interesting. What do you think? Let us know in the comments, please, okay? Now, what Brian and Pete are going to do is they're going to speak now for about a minute. This way you can really hear their accents in natural speech.
G'day you mob, my name is Pete and I am the host of Aussie English, a podcast, YouTube channel and online learning platform. So, as you can probably tell by the name and by the accent, I am from a little country, wow, little in population, big in terms of size, called Australia. So, we are a nation of about 25 million people. Most of us live on the east coast, on a thin strip along the east coast there near the beach, where there is a lot of forest. We tend to not have large populations in the desert regions, which make up most of Australia. I'm from the southeast area of Australia in a state called Victoria. So my sort of hometown is called Ocean Grove, and it is near a large city called Geelong, which is near Melbourne. And you guys might have heard of Melbourne. And if you're Americans, you probably pronounce it as Melbourne. Okay, that's the first no-no in this video. It's Melbourne. Melbourne.
Thanks, Pete. And now let's listen to Brian.
So a little bit more about me. I'm 28 years old. I live in Rome, Italy, and I actually started my Italian journey 8 years ago in 2013. Now I know when you think of the United States, you probably think of New York and Miami and Los Angeles, but America is a very big country, and I'm actually from the center part of America, a state called Colorado. So what is Colorado? Why is it famous? Well, it's probably famous most for its mountains, the Rocky Mountains, and in general, Colorado is very beautiful with its nature. I'm probably biased, but I would argue that Colorado has the most beautiful nature in all of America. So if you like the outdoors, it's a very good place for you to come.
Well, what can I say? Pete, Brian, thank you so much for helping make this video. I had a really good time. Thank you very, very much. Guys, please subscribe to their channels, okay? I've put the link in the description, okay? Follow them. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. We had loads of fun. I hope you had loads of fun too. Now, hopefully in the future, you'll see us again doing another collaboration, okay? Take care. See you soon.